It may be off the beaten track and be home to only 3,000 people, but the Danish town of Mariager or Mariagerkirke is full of surprises, including a charming town square, a saltwater pool in which you can't sink, and a famous new pipe organ. Known as the Town of Roses, Mariager is in Jutland, a province of northeastern Denmark. It lies on Mariager Fjord, so you'd expect it to have a sail club. But what you might not expect to see nearby is a museum showing the role that salt has played in civilization and to Mariager, where salt has been extracted since the Middle Ages. During the Middle Ages, the church that stood on this site was 5 times bigger than the one we see here today. The Abbey Church was part of a double monastery founded by the Brigittines, the last monastic order to reach Denmark before the Reformation. Today, the church may be only 1/5 of its original size, but it is still a sizable space and made a lasting impression on organist Mikael Ustrup when he walked into the building for the first time.
It was the height of the church, the mood of the church, and we've got 16 meters from floor to ceiling and a very, very nice acoustic. And I've been playing in 2 small churches, nice but small, and suddenly I was here in the middle of a large cathedral. And I just decided I need to work here. And fortunately, they appointed me.
Tell me about how this organ came about. There wasn't anything necessarily wrong with the other one, was there?
No, that was a good organ, a very good organ, but it was a small organ for a large church. It was built at a time when this town was a very little town. The former organist was not that interested in playing concerts, so they had this small organ. He was never asked. Suddenly one day, you're going to have a new organ. That was 14 stops, and that was 71. And it was very good, but I started making a lot of concerts here, and people attended concerts in a large number. So at some point just before the millennium, we started joking about having the new organ, because you can't just come and say, I need to spend 1.5 million British pounds for an organ and then expect it to happen. So it started as a joke. I would like a new organ. What do you say to that? And everybody laughed. And I repeated, I would like a new organ. And everybody laughed. And within 2 years, nobody laughed. But some people saw the possibility of actually make this happen. To have an organ that suited the church, the big church, the big cathedral.
Was funding ever an issue when they started to talk about it? Did they say, how much will this cost?
Yes, somebody asked how much that would cost, and I figured out a number that wouldn't last very long. But we began, and we knew in the beginning that we would have to do some fundraising in the end to get all the money for this organ.
How did you know you wanted a Bernard Auberin organ? I mean, why not a Danish builder?
I didn't know that I wanted a Bernard Auberin organ, but when we discussed the new organ, we started looking around. And in Denmark, we have very few foreign organs. We have one very famous organ in Mariagerkirke in Valby by the famous French organ builder Mikael, one of his few organs outside France. But it's primarily Danish organs in Denmark. But we export a lot of organs to various number of countries. So I thought, why not look around in Europe to see what's happening? And then I came over Bernard Auberin, and he was to become a part of the competition for the organ in this church.
So it was put out to tender.
Yeah.
Several people nominated.
We had a number of companies in the tender, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And can you remember what it was specifically that won him the bid?
Yeah, it was new. It was new in Denmark, because organs in Denmark do not look like this one. They are modern organ. There's done by Danish architects, and they have got their own style, and it's not necessarily the style of Bernard Auberin. So we looked at this. We didn't know in the beginning that it would be so difficult, but we liked. The main thing was we liked the sound of the organ. That's the main thing above everything else.
At what point did the look of the organ come?
Bernard Auberin is a very bright man. He is very clever, and very early in the process, he faxed, that was before the email, he faxed us a drawing of what he thought would be an organ for this church. And we looked at this piece of paper, and we were amazed, because it was nothing that we had imagined. But I think he made himself in a negotiable position. He taking the lead by having given an idea of the organ. And we were caught because we didn't know anything. I knew something about the stop list and 3 manuals, but I never considered the look of the organ to be that important. But we ended up with what is very close to what Bernard had imagined from the beginning.
And it was a struggle?
It was a struggle because in Denmark you have not a separation between state and church. So we have to have everything approved by the state authorities.
Is that because they're funding?
No, even if I paid all the money myself, I couldn't do what I like to do, because I would still have to have the project approved by the authorities. I couldn't put anything in this church, even if I paid it myself. But of course, we had to get a loan. We are paying for the next 8-9 years. That's nothing from the authorities, and the rest of the money we had by a very big foundation, Maersk, in Denmark.
What does this organ bring to the musical life of Jutland?
This is one of the main concert churches in this area. It's nice and large, and it's bright, and it's got a rich reputation for music through the last 15-20 years. But now with this organ, I find that more people are attending an organ concert than a choir concert, which is quite opposite to what it used to be. Because when we have a concert, you can see at the organ, you can actually see the one playing the organ, which is quite amazing for people to look at an organist playing with hands and feet and having a page turner to help. So we put up chairs in the opposite direction so that people can sit and look at the organ. And we have an average way over 100 per organ concert in this church. And people seem to like it, and if there's good weather, we have a glass of wine outside with each concert. And we have now had 2 seasons of organ concerts since the organ was inaugurated in May 2010.
So you're drawing on, because Mariager is a relatively small town.
Rather small, 3,000 people.
Yeah. So you're drawing on not just the locals, but further afield will come?
Yeah. You have an audience coming from a radius of 50 to 80 kilometers from here, and even far away because of the organ.
The music for concerts is one thing, but what about the church music? How does this organ influence your choice of music in the church?
I play larger pieces than I used to play, and I find that the congregation is happy by listening to music, and I can play loud. Nobody is complaining. I think in the old days, there was people would say, "Oh, finish, let's go home." But now I think they like the music, so it's more legal to play larger music within the service.
Mm-hmm. And they stay for the postlude?
They've done.
They've chose to.
They all the time. They've done that. Yeah.
Tell me about this hymn project you've done online. You've played everything, all the hymns on this organ?
I think I've played 673 Danish hymn melodies on the organ. I've recorded it. It took me 10 months, and they all put on the internet. Primarily to let the people attending the services have a chance of having to learn the new melodies and the melodies that we used to sing in the church. We have a lot of melodies in Denmark, we have a lot of hymns in Denmark, and nobody can remember 800 hymns. But now they have the chance of going to the internet and listen to the hymns that we're going to use at the service on Sunday. And without telling anybody about this project, we are having about 100,000 hits for this website a year.
These are traditional hymns? It's a standard hymn book that's been in place quite a while?
We had a new hymn book in Denmark in 2002 and 2003, and I've recorded everything from the old hymn book and everything from the new hymn book, except for the hymns more suitable for guitar.
Tell me about the installation. It's built in a factory in France, right?
Yeah. And
then comes in boxes?
Then it comes in very large boxes, yeah, and it weighs way over 20 ton. And it arrived in Denmark on the 22nd of February 2010 in two very, very big lorries. Lorries so big that they couldn't come close to the church. So we have to reload the organ from the large trucks to smaller trucks somewhere in the city and carry these 20 tons of material into the world, into the church. That took 1 day. And then you said overnight. It's almost overnight because it took 6 organ builders from France 12 days to erect this huge instrument behind me. Somebody told me that this was going to be very, very quick, but I never thought that they could do that in 12 days.
How much local help did those 6 builders get?
We had some local help for carrying the organ into the church. That was primarily the first day. And of course I was here 25 hours a day for the rest of the period. Just I didn't want to miss anything of the project. And I recorded by a webcam the picture of the process for every 3 minutes, and it was put on the internet for people all over the world to see how fast this was going.
It's incredible what you've done. I mean, you've seen this project. It's been your dream, and you've been able to be with it every step of the way. It must be a wonderful feeling for you.
Yeah, I pinched myself in the arm one day saying, is this real? Tomorrow there'll be coming 12 tons organ in my church. What's happening? And suddenly it was here. And then I was surprised how quickly I became familiar with the organ and how quickly it was that it has always been here.
It looks like it belongs. If anything was tailor-made to a space, it's got to be this.
In the summer after the inauguration of the organ, I was standing in the church. Nobody knew that I was the organist, but a lot of tourists come to the church and they looked at the organ saying, wow, what a big organ. And one of them said in Danish, I don't know what it is, everything just fits. And he didn't know that I was the organist in the church. And they talked about this. It was kind of perfect for the church. It had some calmness. And maybe it's because Bernard Auberin is building his organ with this golden section as his main target.
Can you just explain how that works? How he's used that? It's Fibonacci.
The Fibonacci numbers, yeah. Everything in this organ can be measured into 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34. But you'll have to do a lot of math to prove that. But that's a fact. That's the way he's doing things. Some people like it, some don't. I think it's amazing. If you look at details in the organ, you'll find these numbers everywhere.
And Speaking of the detail in the organ, whose choice was it to paint the case? And there's some peculiarities about that as well.
Yeah, in the beginning I was quite into it being in plain oak. But very early in the process, the decision to paint the organ was made. And today I'm very happy that we chose to paint the organ. We didn't choose the colors until the organ was erected. And we had a very anxious Bernard walking around the church saying, I think you should. And we said, that's our decision. You built the organ, but we are going to paint it. And we have 3 very talented painters from Denmark, and they drew a lot of samples, painting samples, marbling samples, and we had to choose which one we liked. And then they worked on the organ for a month after it was erected, and the organ builders went home, and we ended up with an organ like this. And it's so huge in this end of the church, so if it had been a dark organ, it would have been destroying the room. But now it's very light and living.
The kind of music that you can play on it, Mikael, the repertoire, is there anything that doesn't really suit it?
Yeah, of course. When you buy a violin, you can play. If you buy a very good violin, you're capable of playing almost all violin music. If you buy a grand piano, it's the same. If you buy an organ, you have to make a lot of choices. You have to put it in a room. You can't move it. And you have the number of stops. You have the acoustic of the room where the organ is standing. And we made our choices. We have no swell box. We have no sensor registration system. We have this plain, back to nature organ. And it doesn't play César Franck. Other organs can do that. This one is playing a lot of music. And people who look at the stop list would tend to say, oh, this is a neoclassic Baroque organ. It could be very suitable for this and that. But actually, it can play romantic music. It can play modern music because the instrument in itself is so nice, and it's so well-tuned and well-sounding. So you can make it sound romantic. You can play Mendelssohn, you can play Danish romantic music and contemporary music with no problems, even though it was tuned in a young temperament tuning.
Is there anything that you would like to have seen incorporated into it that wasn't, or is it just perfect?
Nobody is perfect. And no organ is perfect. Small things I could have liked to have changed, and some details will be changed in the voicing of the organ within the next 2 or 3 years. The organ has to settle for some years. It's been brought from France, from their climate to Denmark to be erected in this church, and it has to adapt our humidity and temperature. So within the next 2 years, it'll be settled. One day I was standing here, the painters, they were just painting, and then one of the painters said, oh, you're a nice guy, and I'd like to have a picture of you. And he took a picture and said, well, why would you like to have a picture of me? And the next day, I was up there with my big nose looking down at the keyboard, like this. I didn't ask for that. I asked for the painters to make this very funny marbling of the 2 nations gathered in this organ, the French and the German, because Bernard Auberin actually think it's a more German than French organ. So we put Bernard Auberin here on the right, seen from the church, and a very famous German, Johann Sebastian Bach, on the left. You can see it from the church if you know they're here.
Any others?
Any others? Yeah. Actually 3 others. Opposite where I'm located, we have the chairman of the church in the upper right corner. He and I has been working for this project since 2000. And in the left lower corner, we have the previous minister of the church who has been in the organ committee as well. So the three of us has been the main forces in this project. And we have the very last person. If you look up, you'll see a face with glasses. You see it? You'll see the Danish architect who was assigned to this organ. This stop, the Mariager on the third manual, is my favorite stop. I've never heard anything like it. With the tremolo even nicer.